Hey everybody, this is Mr. Storm, and in this lesson, we're going to talk about how to validate sources you find online. There's a ton of information on the internet. Some of it is great, some of it not so great, and we're going to learn how to determine between the good info and the bad info in this lesson. So here's our learning objective for this lesson. Students will understand the appropriate means to search for information online and validate the sources of said information. So there's a problem, right? The internet is the greatest human development in the last 200 years. I would say probably the greatest human invention ever. But it does have some drawbacks, right? Because the internet is more of a democracy, right? Meaning you're free and open to kind of do whatever you want on the internet, barring, some other, some real legal issues. But you can just create a website and put any information you want on that website. You can post content without your information being validated or edited or put through any kind of filters or anything like that, right? I can start a website about any subject I want and put anything on that website I want. So that's good because it allows for creativity and openness and more people can express themselves. But it's kind of a bad thing because now that leaves the job of validating information up to you, the user, the person reading the info online. Think about this in the context of the news, right? There used to be three networks, and they would have a 1-hour news show every night. And if you saw it on the news, you can generally believe that it's true. Now, there are millions of websites that claim to be news sources, but they don't have real information. They just make stuff up. And it's up to you to figure out what's real and what's not. So thankfully, the process of figuring out what's real and what's not is pretty easy if you know what you're doing. It's not impossible. You can actually determine whether or not information is real on the internet. And we're going to talk about how to do it today. So here are things that you want to look for. Look for the author, the purpose, objectivity, accuracy, reliability, and credibility, currency, and links. My face is covering up links, but it's down there. So let's talk about these individually. The author. So here are some questions that you want to ask yourself about the author of the website that you're on, or the web page, or the article that you're reading. Is the name of the author or creator on the page? Can you easily find the name of the person who wrote that article? If you can't, then you might want to start thinking about why they would have hidden that information from you, right? Are their credentials listed, meaning their occupation, their years of experience, their position? Is this person qualified to tell me about this subject, right? That's something we need to know. And if it's not listed, why are they hiding this information? Contact information. Is there a way for me to respond to this author if I have an issue with the content they've put? Is there a link to a homepage? Is this information going back to a reputable site? Is that page an individual or an organization? Or is it a place that sponsors or supports the information they're trying? See what I mean? Like if I'm looking up information about, I don't know, toothpaste or whatever, right? And I see this article written by a dentist that says that Colgate toothpaste is the best toothpaste, and all of their toothpastes might as well be dog crap because Colgate's the only thing you want. And then I see that is an article written specifically for Colgate's website, then I'm going to think there might be some bias there, right? So what does the domain name or the URL reveal about the website itself, right? So if I'm looking at the domain name, is it, from a website, or is the domain name something that kind of gives away the bias of the author? For example, if I'm reading information about politics and the domain name is like redalertmedia.maga.trumpisawesome.gov, right? I'm probably going to be a little bit suspicious, right? There's probably some bias there with that author. And if the owner of the website's not identified, what can I tell about the website just by looking at the website? What can I tell about the website by looking at the address, right? Now, if I find an author's name, and I want to validate whether or not that author is qualified to talk about the subject, or if they have some kind of implicit bias that's going to skew their opinion on this information, then I can always just Google their name, see what other articles they've written online, see if they have a track record of, doing less than reputable work in this space, right? Purpose. Let's talk about motive, right? What is the motive behind this page's creation? And are they trying to sell me a product? Or are they trying to convince me of something, right? So think about who's the intended audience for this website. Is the audience scholarly experts, people who are actually trying to find information? Or is the audience basically this general public or people who, aren't really experts in the field, right? If you're researching a topic, you're probably not an expert in the field as well. So it's fine to use sources that aren't necessarily written for the experts, but you have to think about maybe that information isn't the most up-to-date, cutting-edge information on that specific subject. If it's not stated, what do you think is the purpose of the website, right? Think about the website a bit and think about what their purpose is. Are they trying to inform me of something, teach me something? Are they trying to explain or enlighten? Or are they trying to persuade me of something? Are they trying to get me to vote for a certain candidate or back a certain policy? Or are they trying to sell me a product? Are they trying to take money out of my wallet and give me a product that maybe doesn't work, right? So think about the motive. Why does this website exist? And why does this article exist? Why does this information exist? And if they're trying to persuade you of something, you can probably guess that they weren't extremely careful about making sure they told you nothing but the truth, right? Objectivity. This is a big one, right? Objectivity means basically you present the facts no matter what your opinion is, and you don't skew the information based on your own personal bias. So think about, is the information covered fact, opinion, or propaganda, right? Is it a fact? If it is a fact, how can you determine if it's a fact? Is it something that you've seen in peer-reviewed journals and you've seen there's a consensus among the community of experts that study this issue? Or is this just an opinion? Is this somebody's opinion about this particular subject and this person may not even be qualified to really talk about it? Or is this just pure propaganda? Is this something that sounds like it's real news or real information, but it's been twisted and manipulated to try to convince me to think a certain way? It's important to think about this whenever you're reading information online. Now, my personal way of thinking about this is, if I find myself immediately agreeing with something, then that probably should be a red flag. And it makes me think, maybe I'm just emotionally reacting to this because I really agree. Maybe I should look up the information and find out for myself if this is true. So is the author's point of view objective and impartial? Again, is the author someone who is trying to convince me of something? Do they have a long track record of being a bad faith actor in this space? Is the language free of emotion-rousing words and bias, right? If I'm reading an article and in the first sentence they've insulted somebody or they've, used a bunch of hyperbolic words, I can probably tell that this website isn't a reputable source for information, and I probably should get my information about the subject from a more reputable site. Is the author affiliated with an organization that has ties to this information? Right? In the assignment that you're going to do, one of the scenarios is related to global climate change. If I'm looking for information on global climate change, I probably don't want to read articles written by people who work for the oil industry, right? There's a direct conflict there, and there is a motivation for someone who works for the fossil fuel industry to make it seem like global climate change isn't real, right? So I might want to get my information from an expert in the field, a scientist, right? Does the content of the page have the official approval of the institution, organization, or company? This one's kind of tricky to understand because, well, it's on the website, so it has to be approved by that company, right? Well, no, not really, not necessarily. If I'm looking for news articles and I'm scrolling through my favorite news website, I might see articles that are linking to something that looks like a real news article, but it's a link to an outside website, and that is a sponsored link that is kind of built to look like a real link that's associated with that website I'm on. Does that make sense? So make sure you're looking at real official content that organization is willing to stand behind. Accuracy. Are the sources for factual information clearly listed so that the information can be verified? If you don't give me a source for your information, I don't have to believe anything you say, right? Burden of proof is on the person making the claim. So if someone makes a website and their website essentially is Kim Kardashian is a mermaid, right? I don't have to believe them until they provide evidentiary support, right? Until they prove to me, until they show me some proof that that's the case. So proof and evidentiary support are a little bit hard to define, and for every person, it's different, right? People are convinced by different things, but start thinking about whether or not the information they're presenting, have they sourced that information? Have they given you links to the place where they got the information from? That way you can go to that main source and verify for yourself whether or not it's what they're saying, what is actually intended. Is it clear who has the ultimate responsibility for the accuracy of the content of the material? If I'm reading an article on the New York Times website, then I can be reasonably sure that the New York Times editorial board has read the article and will stand behind the accuracy of that article, right? If they find that someone lied in their article and their reporting, then I can be reasonably sure that they will print a retraction and tell me, the reader, that there was some information that was incorrect in this article. That's how it's supposed to be done, right? A lot of these news websites that pop up, they don't follow that same standard, right? They don't take responsibility for the accuracy of the information on their websites. They just post stuff and just hope people share it on social media, right? So think about, is this place I'm getting my news from actually standing by their information? Has the information been reviewed or refereed? Meaning, is this information open for peer review? Have other experts in this field been given a chance to review this information and determine whether or not it is accurate? Now, scientific studies, they have a process called peer review where you publish your study in a scientific journal, and other experts in that field of study, they will read and try to replicate your experiment to review whether or not what you did was correct. A lot of errors in scientific experiments are found during the peer review process. So if you're reading a scientific study, see if you can find other peer-reviewed information that uses the same methodology or studies the same information. See if there's a consensus among all the studies. Is the information free of grammatical, spelling, or typographical errors? Here's what I mean by that. If I'm reading an article and it's rife with misspellings and it doesn't use proper grammar, then I can be pretty sure that there is not an editor for this website. If there's no editor, I can be pretty sure that the accuracy of the information I can find on this website is pretty spotty at best. Worst case scenario, it's probably Russian propaganda. Best case scenario, it's just someone who's uninformed, who's trying to convince me of, to agree with their political ideology or whatever. Reliability and credibility. So why should anyone believe information from this website? Think about it like this. If I sent this website to a friend of mine, do I think that they would believe it? Or is there anything that they could pick apart on this website? Is this source airtight, right? Do they seem reliable? Does the information appear to be valid and well-researched, or is it just unsupported by evidence, right? Am I reading something that's so outlandish that I really can't believe it? It probably means that it's not true, right? Are quotes and other strong assertions backed by sources that you could check through other means? So this is a bit tricky sometimes, especially in journalism. Journalists rely on anonymity of their sources from time to time. So you might be reading a reputable article, and the article might say sources close to the president, or a source who, preferred not to be named said blah, 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 blah. Those are still fine, depending on the organization you're getting that news from. This can be misused. Some people can just say, I talked to a source and they said this, but I don't want to tell you who it is because they told me they wanted to stay anonymous, and you can make up anything you want. Check to see if what that source is saying jives with what you already know about this subject. We call this the sniff test. Does this info pass the sniff test? Is it something that makes sense in the context of what I already know? Not what I believe, not what my bias tells me, but what I already know to be true. What institution, company, government, university, etc., supports this information? Am I reading information that is completely unsupported by the rest of the scientific community? If so, I'm probably reading bad info. Now, just because something has consensus doesn't mean it's true. That is an argument that I know some of you are making right now. That's true. But how do we know something is true, right? It's studied, it's researched, we do experiments, we do the math, we figure it out. And who do we ask to determine whether or not things are true? Well, scientists, right? It's their job. So if the scientific community, who all study this specific issue, say that this is a thing, this is a real thing, but 3 guys on the internet say, nuh-uh, I don't believe you, I'm personally going to go with the scientists, right? Because they're much more likely to come to the correct answer. Now, sometimes we learn something new and it changes our understanding of the world. That is true. But as of right now, as of today, I'm going to go with the scientific consensus. But that's me personally. I just don't find non-expert sources online as more convincing than scientific consensus. So there are a lot of these organizations out there that have really important sounding names and really, stuffy sounding names like the Heritage Institute or, the Center for, Global Progress or whatever, right? They have all these really fancy sounding names, but really they're just political organizations that try to push through partisan bills and pay for partisan studies. If you haven't heard of the organization, maybe give it a Goog, right? Google it. Figure out, is this organization, a reputable organization? Do they have a long track record of being right or being wrong about these things? Is there any non-web equivalent of this material that would provide a way of verifying its legitimacy, right? If I'm reading something on Wikipedia and I want to verify if it's accurate, I could look it up in a book. Right now, here's the thing. Books can be less accurate than the internet, especially a place like Wikipedia, because Wikipedia can be updated with new information as it comes in. But if you can find multiple sources for that piece of information, then you're probably good to go. Now, there is a trick, though. Some websites will basically link to an original source of information, which then links back to another original source, which then links back to another. They'll create a circle of sources. This is where I got the information from. And it's really just someone made it up. And it's just a circle of sources, right? Careful with that. Currency. Is this information timely? Right? Is it up to date? If I'm looking at a website and the information is from 1996 and it's about social trends, it's probably going to be out of date, right? I might want to find more information or more current information. Links. Are there links related to the topic and useful information? Are the links related to the topic itself, and are they useful to the purpose of the website? Here's what this means. If I'm on a website and it's a website talking about, COVID-19 precautions, right? And all the other links on the website are telling me about how vaccines cause autism and masks don't work and how, stay-at-home mandates are anti-constitutional and all that stuff. Well, it's related to the topic, but all of that information is incorrect, right? And so maybe I don't trust the information on the page because they're linking to all these sources or this other information that just isn't real. So are links still current or have they become dead ends? If you click a link and it doesn't go anywhere, well, maybe again, that means that someone's not monitoring that website. Someone's not managing or editing that website. And maybe that website isn't being accurate for the information on that website isn't accurate because it's not being updated. Are the links annotated? Meaning, if I hover over the link, can I see where I'm going? Or is that hidden? That's a problem. The quality of web pages linked to the original web page may vary. Again, I might be on a reputable site, but there's a paid link to a irreputable or disreputable site. So you have to think about the situation you're in and use your, I was going to say common sense. Not common sense. Common sense is not a thing you would use. Critical thinking skills. There we go. That's what we're looking for. Use your critical thinking skills. Is this website reputable? And are the links around it disreputable? But are these paid links? If they are, maybe that means this website's fine. You got to use everything in conjunction. You got to think about all of it. So this is a fun little tool, evaluating sources with crap. Currency, we talked about that. Relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. So we've covered all of those things. This is just a fun little acronym. So let's talk about sources you shouldn't use, right? The dictionary. I mean, if you need to define words, fine. The dictionary works. But I mean, honestly, like if you're trying to write a research paper and you're using the dictionary as a resource, not a good idea. Wikipedia.org. Now, the information you find on Wikipedia is probably accurate and reputable because Wikipedia has an editing policy where people are actively editing Wikipedia pages right now. But you can't use it as a source for your research paper because it's not a primary source. It is a meta resource, meaning it's a resource that collects information from other primary sources. About.com. This is a source people try to use all the time. It's not a great source to use because it's very general and the information it gives doesn't necessarily have the highest level of accuracy. Social media. Of course not. Please don't ever use social media as a reputable source for anything. Just assume if you saw it on social media, it's not true. All right? You have to think about the motivations of people sharing information on social media. If someone shares political information on social media, it's probably because they're trying to persuade you to think the way they do, or make you angry, or motivate you to vote, or whatever. Again, they're trying to persuade you. That information may not be true, especially with what we know about how other foreign countries use our social media and fake news to basically convince us of things that aren't true. Be very, very, very skeptical of anything you see on social media. Find a primary source for that information, one that's reputable. Sources that you should use. Google Scholar. If you type scholar.google.com into the address bar, you will get a special version of Google that only brings up scholarly resources. It's a very handy tool. Internet Public Library, or IPL. This is a great place to go to find a lot of information on subjects in one free place. RefSeek is also a good place to find references, and ERIC. ERIC is great. So let me know if you have any questions about this information. This is kind of an art, not really a science. This is pretty hard to do. And the more sophisticated we get at validating sources, the more sophisticated liars get in hiding their motivations or making their lies look better and look more like the truth. Again, the internet, it's a democratized place. Anyone can put whatever they want on the internet, and that's a good thing. But in order to protect yourself from mind viruses, in order to protect yourself from thinking incorrect information, you really want to think about where you got your information and whether or not that source is reputable. Okay. Thanks for paying attention, and I'll see you next time.